What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 400. 400, everybody. That's such a big number. I'm so proud. So thank you to everybody who's been a guest, who's tuned in. And today we're going to be talking about role of feedback loops and effective listening and building a better restaurant workplace culture. We're going to have Brianna Borin-Lygizos of Snooze AM Eatery, as well as Levin Deli in Denver, on in just a moment. Let me pause a second. You all know how important it is to me for us to develop workplaces worth working. It is the undercurrent of everything that we've been doing at Best Served, public facing and behind the scenes. A lot of it has to do with my ability to go deep into my own history and recognize and reflect on the culpability that I have, that many of us who've built this industry have to recognize that a lot of its shortcomings are not the fault of 22-year-old kids. They're ours. And as elders and leaders of this industry, it's up to us to do something different. And Brianna is absolutely somebody that I admire the work that she has done. All right, let's bring in Brianna now. Brianna, good to see you.
Hey, Jensen, thanks so much for having me. This is great. 400. Absolutely. Unbelievable.
I'm so excited to have you be on the number 400. I think we're close to 500 now, but to see that number 400, it's a proud moment. And so many people, Sophie, Corey, Andrew, so many people behind the scenes have made that possible. And this is great because this is a part of a 7-day series that we're doing, Restaurant Week. This is episode 1 of the 7-part series. So tune in every day of this week and you'll be able to check out the whole series, kind of deep diving into a lot of the issues and opportunities facing restaurants. So I felt like we had to start at the heart of it. We had to start with this HR type conversation, but really it's a human conversation. And so I'm excited to have you be a part of that. As always, everybody, 6 questions with Brianna. Go to Best Served Podcast, check out the article. You talk about your first job in Wyoming. Absolutely love that. You talk about internships, which I think is important and valuable as we're trying to cultivate and nurture those 22-year-olds who need leadership, who need guidance. So you talk about that as well. So definitely check out that article. All right. Role of feedback, effective listening. You brought this topic up. It makes all the sense in the world. Set the tone for us. Set the table. What does that mean at a high level? And then let's go down some rabbit holes.
Yeah. So, let me just start by, giving a quick background. I've had an opportunity to be with Snooze when we started we opened in 2006. I joined in 2008 when we had 1 restaurant. We have 57 restaurants today, 3,000 Caesars. And the one thing that I've learned over that 15-year period is the importance of being able to listen to your people. There are a lot of decisions that are made every single day when you're scaling and growing a company. And if you don't have the right tools and mechanisms to hear from your people, you can make a lot of mistakes along the way. And so we've really had to develop true functions around how do we receive feedback, how do we give feedback, and how do we create kind of a listening structure that allows us to hear our people in a really meaningful way. And that's something that I believe has been really critical for us in being able to maintain, a people first culture through growth and maintain something that is so powerful and really makes us different than the rest of the concepts that are out there. So
yeah, please
go ahead.
Continue.
No, please.
I love it.
Yeah. So, I want to set that context because I think there's an important reason why we're having this discussion. It's just real lived experience and something that we know we have to maintain as we scale to 75 restaurants, 100 restaurants. And we intend to do that and to do it different than anyone has in the past. So that would be the context.
Differently than anybody in the past as you scale to 75 and 100. You're at that tipping point. There's multiple tipping points. There's a tipping point of going from 1 to 2. How many concepts do we say that kill it on number 1? They go, we're amazing. Let's open number 2. Number 2 starts to cannibalize number 1. You siphon money and attention that way, and you close both locations. Then there's multiple other tipping points. It's like now you're a regional brand. Now you've gone national all the way. You're getting into that. You're getting into the big leagues, serious of the 75 and 100. How are you going to do that differently? What does that mean from your perspective within Snooze?
Yeah, we ask ourselves every day, how do we grow this brand and not end up like many have, right? Whether you're corporate, you're stale, you're leading from the top down, all of those things. And we ask that question every day. And we believe in disruption and innovation. And that means that you have to do things from the bottom up, right? So we have an inverse triangle. We don't have.
There we go. The hierarchy triangle. I was going to say it if you didn't. I
Yeah, the
love it.
hierarchy matters. We have an inverse triangle, and the people whom we serve as leaders are at the top of the food chain, and we have to serve them, in the best way that we can. And that is something that we believe deeply. We believe in disruption, we believe in innovation, we believe in thinking about these things differently. And so when I say different than anyone else, it's not to say that there's not amazing brands out there doing this really well. We have to figure out how to do it different for us, for our brand that is unique, it's different, it's a niche that is in the industry that we have to figure out how to do differently. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. I think seeking feedback is probably the first step. You have to create a culture in which people feel ownership, they feel
Okay.
empowerment, and they feel buy-in. When people care deeply about what you're doing, they believe it's purposeful work, they believe that they are a part of the mission, right? The process, they're an integral piece to being able to reach the company's goals. They feel much more inclined to share their opinion, whether that opinion is in alignment with where the organization's going, or their opinion is out of alignment of where the organization is going. They feel empowered to share that, and then voices are heard, right? And so it starts a lot with just making sure that you create kind of this sense of empowerment, belonging, purpose, inclusivity, engagement, all those things that you hear about and we talk about all the time in
Of
culture.
course. Which can
If you
sometimes just feel like buzzwords, or they
Yeah,
graffitied them on the wall and nobody ever talks about them again. They're on a handbook that somebody scrolled to page 67, signed it, and
yeah.
never looked at it again. They're not lived, right?
Yeah, right. And that's what, I hire people every day, right? And all they say is, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop. Like everyone
Mhm.
says this,
Yes.
everyone says this, and I'm just waiting for it to be not true, right? And at the
Because
end
we
of
have a
the day,
bad reputation.
yeah,
Right? And probably rightfully so. I mentioned it
we
at
do.
the onset. Like, I've had to say, "Wait a minute, we didn't do everything right. Wait a minute, like, we have to take accountability and responsibility for that." So, I can
Yeah.
appreciate that. The feedback loop itself, I wanna talk about the structure of it, right? Because everything that
Mhm.
we're talking about, it feels right, and if we
Yep.
do it, it is right.
Right.
Yet doing that consistently day to day when you're getting grinded up in the minutia of how we do what we do, it can be really
Mhm.
difficult. But I wanna go back because I wanna start often from those pain points so that we can build towards the solution. Because sometimes if the solution is just this shiny thing on the hill, it's unattainable, and that's for somebody else. So I
Mhm.
want to maybe go back a little bit because you kind of took us back to first location. Wow, I'm thinking of waiting in line when I first moved here in 2007 for 2 hours at the first
Ridiculous.
location and be like, what is going on here?
Mhm.
Unbelievable. And and knowing that the Schlegels, John, Adam are like living upstairs, right?
Mhm.
It's pretty
Yep.
unbelievable. So you get hired 2008 intern. When do you actually kind of get into the HR side? And I want to know some of those early growing pains, maybe most specifically around feedback loops, when listening became a part of the goal and maybe a part of the struggle.
Yeah. So to the first part of your question, throughout my 15 years at Snooze, I've played a lot of different roles. I'm an operator at heart. I love working the floor, and started as an intern, became the first manager that they hired outside of the founders in 2007, right as I was graduating with a hospitality degree. And then from there, kind of moved in multiple facets. So I was a assistant manager, general manager for a couple of years, became the director of HR and people. I then went back into operations to build out our
Mm.
first ever multi-unit role. So I was back in operations for a couple of years, leading the Colorado region. We had 8 restaurants at that time here in Colorado. And then from there, I went into the VP of training and new restaurant openings, essentially. So I spent the next 5 years opening 35 restaurants.
Oh, you've worn all the hats. All right.
Yeah, and then ended up really honing in on the people side of the business, and now have scaled that role over the past couple of years. And in that, I've experienced a lot of things. I've been the operator that I felt like wasn't being listened to, right?
Of
And
course.
you're teaching this, and you're doing this, and you're making me do this, and it doesn't make any sense. I've also been the person creating the training and the systems on the other side. And I think there's one major thing that happens. I think we forget, as either corporate professionals or training leaders or HR professionals or whatever it may be, we forget who we serve, right? We forget the nature of what our industry is. That there are, 50% of 43% of our population is non-white, non-English speaking. That's huge,
Yes.
and we forget that. So we create training material that's built for an average reading level, all of these things that people can't actually receive that information, how can I expect them to have an opinion and give me feedback if they're not even taking in the initial message? And
Love.
we forget who we serve, right? We forget that they're on the floor for 10 hours and the last thing they want to do is go read a computer, sit in front of a computer and read an email that's way too long and could have been 3 sentences. So
Yeah.
we forget those little tiny things about the people that we serve. And throughout that time, we've had to get really clear. So when I say feedback and communication, you have to have systems in place that say, couple things. Here's all the material that's going to be bilingual no matter what. Here are the most critical things that we need to say to our people that need to be in multi-language, multiple languages. That's one. And does the whole organization understand that? So every time something's produced, it comes out in multiple languages if it's a particular set there. Then what does your material look like? Are you attaching kind of the 3 different learning styles or the 10 different learning styles, we could call it, right? That people need in order to actually seek that information. And then what is the follow-up that then asks for feedback in that? And how do you create this system that takes it full cycle versus the top down, which is here's everything that you need to go do, now do it. And instead it's, here, we believe that these tools are to best serve you. Here's how we've designed them and here's what we've kept in mind. Now, please tell us what we missed so that we can make this a well-rounded, tool for you to operate within the restaurant. And that takes a lot of extra time. It's really easy to create and push stuff out, and it's really easy to say, go do this. The harder part is to stop, to put it what we call kind of through ops discovery. So we create something,
Slow down.
slow down, put it through ops discovery, let operators touch it, feel it, understand it, then seek feedback, then roll it out. Don't roll it out, then say, well, it's working, right? So there's this really interesting process that you have to get really good at, both through the growth perspective, but also menu innovation, employee experience innovation, all of those pieces. So there are certain techniques, and I could go into each of those depending on, the time that we have, but
Hours and hours. I know
yeah,
that we
it's
could
about
have.
understanding who you serve,
Well,
and what is unique about them.
here's last thing I do want to touch on, and look, this probably needs to be just a mini series, you and I
Yeah.
just chopping it up, getting into this stuff, because it's so important, and it's what you and I just eat, sleep, drink, breathe, like all of it. It's kind
Mhm.
of coursing through us at all times, for better or worse, it feels like.
Yeah.
Last piece, because I know people will be like, okay, this sounds great, but Snooze is this big company. You said 75 to 100 people. You must have a whole team, all these things. But you also, in the article, again, everybody go to bestservedpodcast.com, 6 questions with Brianna. You'll be able to get a little bit more of your personal background, your bio, as well as just some real nuggets. You mention the HR department of one, basically a restaurant independent operator who doesn't have that. And you have a restaurant. You're a co-owner with your husband of a restaurant. So what do people need to know that they're like, okay, well, Brianna's not just sitting on an ivory tower saying this is what everyone needs to do with all this infrastructure. You're doing it at a one-to-one level as well. Kind of give us a little of that perspective, just to kind of put a bow on that, because so many of
Yeah, I am
our
have
viewers are
been
the independent operator,
Yeah, HR person of one at Snooze as well for many years, but certainly supporting Anthony, my husband, with the deli on the HR side. There's a couple of things that are critical. I think number one, know who you are, right? Know who you are and live through that deeply. And I think that's a really important piece. What is your value proposition to your employee, and what is it that you say you're giving them, and give it to them. And when you don't give it to them, apologize, ask
Mm.
for forgiveness, and then grow
Mm.
from that. And running, human resources or risk management from an independent concept is very different than what I'm doing today. You have to
Sure.
treat people right, and you have to show up for them, and you have to talk to them, and you have to know who they are. And through that, you mitigate a lot of the basic HR and risk compliance type related things, because you're showing up and caring for your people. So the number one thing I focused on when I was a team of one, and that I focus on now, is how do I recognize my people? How do I honor my people? How do I know who my people really are? And how do I create a space in which they feel safe, which they feel heard, and which they feel appreciated? And there is so much that you mitigate on the risk side from just doing that. So if you are doing anything, know who you are, celebrate your people, and show up for them. And that really protects the company in a lot of ways. And it also allows you to understand what your people need from the very beginning, instead of telling them what they need. So celebration and recognition goes a long way, and just honoring the people you serve is absolutely what an HR department of one should be focused on. All the other stuff comes and it will build itself as needed. But that's really the most important piece when you're working with an independent concept.
That's good. We got to get that mindset right. And I got goosebumps. I got all the feels because that's
True.
such a thesis statement for us is to acknowledge unsung hospitality heroes, like
Mhm.
create a sense of belonging and purpose, and
Mhm.
then systemize everything around that nucleus. And I think that's what you talk about. Again, you talk about that specifically, like get those systems in place to make onboarding and offboarding easy,
Mhm.
like make
Mhm.
that process seamless so you don't have to burn brain calories and
Mhm.
then be stretched too thin, and then you start to make bad decisions. You
Yep.
sometimes even become a caricature of yourself. You don't even make decisions that you would make. You don't even interact with people the way that you normally do
Mhm.
because you're so stressed, you're so stretched thin. So I know a lot of the viewers, listeners will really recognize that in themselves, and hopefully they just take these 16 minutes with us to just take a deep breath and know that others have gone through this. And Brianna's here to support. Like, you got a lot of content
Absolutely.
out there, so if you
Yeah.
if you make sure and check out this content and then just Google Brianna, and you'll find all kinds of great stuff if it's on LinkedIn or articles you're featured in. So thanks for the work that you're doing, and I'm serious, we probably need to talk 15 more
Yeah.
times.
Let's
So
let's do it. I'm in. I'm all in.
i'm,
Thanks so much.
I'm excited about this. All right, you have a great rest of your day. All right, everyone, that is it. Once again, this was Best Served Podcast 400. A little bit longer. I needed a couple more moments with Brianna, and this has been Best Served Podcast 400. Role of feedback loops and effective listening in building a better restaurant culture. That is it. Tune into all of the Restaurant Week miniseries this week. Some great stuff. Mentioned 43% of the industry is non-white, non-English speaking. We're going to have John from the Hispanic Restaurant Association on as well, talking about the impact, massive impact of the lifeblood of the